All right, let's talk about something that trips up even the biggest, smartest brands out there: the quest for growth. I mean, it seems so simple, right? More customers has to equal more success. But it turns out adding the wrong new customers, well, that can be a straight-up recipe for disaster.
So this quote, it comes from a wild story about the clothing brand Lands' End. Back in 2015, they'd hired a high-fashion exec from Dolce & Gabbana to, inject some cool into the brand, attract younger, trendier shoppers. They started rolling out things like stilettos and sequin dresses, which was a galaxy away from their comfy classic stuff. It was a huge swing and a massive miss.
And wow, this number on the screen, it just says it all. The financial hit was absolutely staggering. In just 1 year, Lands' End went from making a $9.2 million profit to losing $7.7 million. That's a nearly $17 million swing in the wrong direction. Why? Because those stylish new customers they were chasing, they never showed up. And their loyal, core customers, they felt totally abandoned and just left.
This whole disaster really shines a spotlight on a core business problem, what the authors call the growth dilemma. See, so many brands think of new customers as just simple additions, like you're just adding another brick to the wall. But they completely forget to ask how these new people are going to get along with the customers who are already there.
And here's the big idea you've got to get. Your customers are not just a random collection of individuals. They are a living, breathing ecosystem. And the value that one person gets from your brand is directly tied to who else is using it. You bring in a new group, and you can change the entire environment for everybody.
Okay, so if it's an ecosystem, how in the world do you manage it without everything descending into chaos? Well, that brings us to the solution. And it's not just about dodging disasters. It's actually about finding some pretty huge opportunities.
The idea is a new way of thinking called Segment Relationship Management, or SRM for short. Now, this isn't just about managing your relationship with your customers. It's about managing the relationships between your different customer groups. It's about understanding how they affect each other, for better or for worse.
So how do you actually do that? You need a tool, right? And the key is this really powerful framework for mapping out all those customer relationships so you can actually see what's going on.
And this matrix is the whole toolkit in one picture. It maps your customer groups on two simple scales. How much do they interact, and how much influence do they have on each other? And that gives us 4 kinds of relationships. You've got separate communities, who basically leave each other alone. Then there's leader-follower, where one cool group makes the brand hot for another. Connected communities, where more is merrier. And then there's that bottom right quadrant. That's the danger zone. Incompatible segments.
Let's start in the easiest corner of that map, separate communities. This is where you have different kinds of customers using the same brand for totally different reasons, and honestly, they could not care less about each other. They just coexist.
Timberland is the perfect example of this. You've got construction workers who love the boots for being tough and durable on the job site, and then you have hip-hop artists who made them an iconic fashion statement. As the rapper Nas famously said, "Suede Timbs on my feet makes my cipher complete." These two groups operate in completely different worlds, and there's zero conflict.
All right, now for a totally different dynamic. This is where you get leader-follower segments. This one is all about status. You have a high-status leader group that makes a brand aspirational, which then makes a much bigger follower group want in on it.
And you can't talk about this without talking about Crocs. For years, they were just seen as kind of dorky, functional shoes. Then, they cleverly targeted a super trendy, fashion-forward group they called explorers. Once those leaders made Crocs cool, a massive wave of fashion followers jumped on board. The explorers basically made it safe and cool for everyone else.
But what happens when you land in that bottom right box, the danger zone? That's where you get conflict. And it turns out conflict isn't just one big, messy thing. It actually comes in a few distinct flavors. So you see, these clashes can be functional. People fighting over how something should be used. It can be about the brand's image, like a luxury brand losing its exclusive vibe. It can be about identity, that classic "you're not a real fan" argument. Or it can get really deep and be about the brand's core values. Let's dig into a clear example of that first one, functional conflict.
The Disney parks are a perfect, and I mean perfect, example of this. On one side, you have families with little kids who are there for that PG, magical experience. On the other, you have this booming segment of child-free Disney adults who want, more thrill rides and fancy cocktails. It creates this constant tug of war. The two groups literally want different things from the exact same space, and it causes friction over everything.
Okay, so we've been talking about conflict like it's this terrible thing to avoid at all costs. But here's the big twist. What if avoiding conflict isn't always the right move? What if sometimes the smartest thing a brand can do is to actually lean into it on purpose?
Nike's campaign with Colin Kaepernick is probably the masterclass in this strategy. They absolutely knew that featuring him would cause a massive backlash. I mean, we all saw the videos of people literally burning their own shoes. But Nike made a calculated bet. They bet that by taking a stand, they would build an unbreakable bond with younger customers who shared those values. And boy, did it pay off, adding $6 billion to their market value.
And for a more recent example, just look at the whole Taylor Swift effect on the NFL. The league saw this incredible opportunity to bring in millions of new, younger fans. Now, did it cause a little friction? Yeah, some traditional fans grumbled every time the camera cut to her suite, but instead of backing down, the NFL leaned all the way in. They welcomed the Swifties, and the result? Viewership among teenage girls shot up by a jaw-dropping 53%.
So, after going through all of this, the epic fails and the brilliant calculated wins, what's the big idea here? What's the one thing you should really walk away with from this explainer?
It all comes down to this. Real sustainable growth isn't about just piling on more customers. It's about being the active, thoughtful manager of your brand's entire ecosystem. It means you have to understand the connections between your customers, you have to know who you might tick off with any given move, and sometimes it even means choosing which customers to fire to make the whole community stronger.
So, I'll leave you with a question to chew on. Think about the brands you interact with every single day. I promise you, once you have this framework in your head, you'll start seeing these exact dynamics playing out everywhere, from your local coffee shop to your social media feed.